Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Right, in today's video we are going to be talking about Vision, and I do have a ton of things to get through, but I also want to make these videos shorter, so without any further delay, let's just break down her positives, negatives, then we're going to see her base rotation, base damage, and also some of her better matchups. And first things first, let's go over all the positives. She does have very decent power control that manifests via power drain and also via combat power rate suppression when she finishes her combos with lights, which I do find quite awesome because it's typically one or another. And ultimately, she can be a very aggressive champion because of her power control. At the same time, I do not think she's like the go-to champion for power control, but it's still something that's very useful and helps her be much more aggressive. As a tech robot, she's immune to poison, bleed, and also nullify and fate seal if she has armor ups active, which is in vast majority of the instances. So that is definitely also a helpful mechanic. Now, she joins Omega Sentinel and Civil Warrior, I believe, in those ranks. And I do like that. I do like when we get more of these kind of unique communities that counter buffet and power snack and things like that. Moving further, easy access to phase mechanic in itself is a great piece of utility because it can let you have openings without making contact with the opponent, which again bypasses a ton of nodes, lets you be more aggressive, lets you ignore block damage in many cases, and in general, I just love when you can use phase mechanic offensively. And it's one of the reasons why I like Vision, but without beating the bushes, I also think she's a champion that does need a tune-up in order to gain a proper place in the game. But to that a bit later. Next up, as a tech champion, and as many tech champions recently have, she does have way to control opponents' prowesses, and that is by heavy attack. It is guaranteed control as well, and that also helps her ramp and damage, which makes her significantly more usable in mid to longer matchups. And then she does have access to passive heal block, which is especially cool because, again, passive heal block interacts nicely with some of the new relics that we have, in addition to the fact that it bypasses a lot of nodes and shrug of abilities. Those are the positives. Now, negative, she has pathetic base stats. And when I say pathetic, I mean arguably the worst base stats in the game. She does have third lowest health pool in the tech class, 10th lowest health pool in general. She has basically the worst crit rate in the tech class and basically the worst crit rate in the game because the rest of these champions are built function around with no crit rate. So her crit rate is absolutely abysmal as well. Critical damage rating, likewise, is just pathetic. So basically, she hardly crits, and when she does, it means very little because she gains hardly any benefit from critting. And then obviously her armor in her base is also tiny and pathetic. That, however, is mitigated by her ability armor ups that she gains at the beginning of the fight. However, keep in mind that those armor ups are not there for the entire fight, and as soon as you start your rotation, they basically go away. So there will be times when she's a champion with no block proficiency, lowest block proficiency in tech class by a country mile, no armor, no crit rate, no crit damage, no HP. So she does have a decent attack, not the worst, not the best, tolerable, I would say. But everything else is absolutely abysmal, as we can see here. Every stat is basically in the red. So what does that mean? That means when things go wrong, things go very wrong and very fast. And when you do take hits on block, they will hurt a lot. Now, some people will say it doesn't matter because her kit is designed so you don't need to take hits in block and stuff like that. And yeah, that's true in a perfect fight, but none of us are perfect human beings and we do make a mistake and we do slip up. And whilst it is perfectly possible to finish a fight with her with a perfect yellow bar, in reality, it's just one of those things where if you do make a mistake, it's gonna hurt and you're probably gonna lose a crap ton of HP. It's just fact, and it does matter, and it obviously affects her base damage as well, which is something that ties in with the base stats. That, yeah, her combo damage in her base is just abysmal too, and that is being topped off with the fact that she has a cyclical damage with an effective limit. And that's kind of like the worst of both worlds if you imagine a mix of Penny Parker and Corvus. Once you run out of your resource, charges, let's say solar charges, armor ups, everything else, it basically goes to a Groot territory. And on top of that, she doesn't deliver damage consistently within that time period whilst you do have these resources active. And that means that if anything goes wrong with that, then you basically have dealt no damage and you will deal no damage. So it is something to keep in mind. There are several champions with cyclical damage, but there are very few champions with limited cyclical damage. And in essence, that translates to a fact where she can be very effective in short fights or fights that her range does cover, but she's going to be absolutely pathetic in long fights, in any fights where opponent's HP exceeds her cycle limit, basically. And that's just something to keep in mind. And in this case, I do think it is quite restrictive because I do also think that her cycle damage is a bit too small. And because of that, she's a champion that cannot punch upwards. She's a champion that has to be ranked high in order to do anything at all. Low rank with vision, you're going to think of as trash, basically. High rank with vision can be very impressive and can do some cool stuff, without a doubt. My problem with it is that at the moment, I think she's kind of undertuned slightly to a point where if you, for instance, have a 6-star rank 3 with vision, I would find her viable only with Recoil Mastery is active, and despite having Liquid Courage Double Edge, she's not recoil friendly because her playstyle involves spamming special attacks, and that hurts a lot. And there's kind of that problem yet again. Also, additionally, she is quite highly SIG reliant. Her SIG lets her inflict energy vulnerability debuffs on the opponent, increasing her range. So it is super important in most of the fights. And that's just another thing that, on top of all of it, kind of speaks against her. And then lastly, she also has a contradicting design where, in a sense, your solar charges are your main currency, but you're forced to spend them endlessly in order to get your energy vulnerability passives, in order to make sure your phase mechanic is working proper, in order to increase her damage. But at the same time, because of it, there will be plenty of times where you cannot stack up enough solar energy to actually do any meaningful damage past your first cycle. Not really a problem in the first cycle, it's definitely a massive problem in the second cycle. And then on top of it all, again, the contradicting design comes from the fact where the way she's tuned currently, with Liquid Courage Double Edge, she has a decent reach. Without it, it's, in my personal opinion, not quite sufficient to make her super relevant without some sort of attack bonuses. Like if you boost her up, if you give her, recoil and then heal her up in wars and stuff like that, yeah, it works. But if you do not want to boost the character with boost, or there aren't any nodes that increase her damage, I don't think it's enough. Neutral things, her base hits are contact physical as a majority of the champions. However, her special attacks do deal with energy damage, so she basically has access to a mixture of both of those. Level 2 bursts are a basic energy damage. It's not tied to Incinerate or Plasma, so you can deal damage, but you can deal damage even if opponents, let's say, Incinerate immune, because level 2s are not Incinerate, it's burst damage. However, it's relatively moderate energy damage, and her main damage source is level 1, and it is tied as Incinerate / Plasma damage, depending whether you fight other class champions or mutants. And then again, it has its ups and it has its downs, because obviously it's tied to Incinerate. If opponent is Incinerate immune, you absolutely do not want to use this champion. And additionally, there are a ton of nodes which she cannot really benefit from, because those aren't debuffs, that's an instant damage. On the flip side, the fact that those aren't debuffs or passives or damage over time effects can let you bypass some other nodes or shrug of abilities. So that's why I hang it in neutral territory. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to be using a rank 3 6-star 120 SIG level revision, which is part of the problem, I think. On a personal note, I do think that she should be at least rank 4 for her to be relevant in, let's say, war or battlegrounds or something like that, and for questing as well. In general, I don't think she's the best questing champion for story content at all, unless there is some major damage modifier increase that she can benefit from. Right, moving on, her base rotation. Now, first of all, we're going to watch it in real time, then I'm going to slow it down and explain it, because there are a few things to go over. But the base idea is that on parries, you can trigger your phase, then you finish your combos with lights or mediums, inflicting suppression or passive heal block. And her rotation is reverse of Guardian or Penny Parker, in a sense that you go to level 2, nearly level 3 ideally. And once you do, then you start spamming level 1. And this is with Liquid Courage Double Edge, by the way. There will be clips with and without. Most of the clips I recorded are with, but at the end of it, I actually specifically for this video took off my recoil masteries to show the kind of difference that you can expect. And here, basically, I dropped my first level 2. I got the max 15 charges. And again, I will repeat this process just to explain exactly what's happening. But here I go for my level 1. And whilst opponent's under 1 bar of power, my level 1 generates no power to opponent and is unblockable. So you can just keep spamming it. And here we can see that with this full range, we basically have dealt 50% of Winter Soldier's health in this one cycle. Now, the problem is the rest of the fight and health. So this took us 1 minute and 10 seconds to do 50% of Winter Soldier with a rank 3 champion. Yes, with recoil, but still not bad at all. So this basically was like, 1 minute. But at this point, we can see that we only have 7 armor ups, we have 0 solar charges, and that means our next cycle is going to be weaker. And then if we need to go for the third cycle, it's going to be even weaker than that. And past this point, your damage just kind of falls off the cliff. First, marginally, but then completely. Let's, however, rewind and explain everything that's happening. So, when you parry, you trigger your phase, and it goes away. In order to make sure your phase gets basically recharged, you need to spend solar energy in any way possible. You can spend solar energy in 4 different ways. Throwing a heavy attack, finishing combo with light, finishing combo with medium, or using level 1. So in most cases, you will go for finish combo with the light to inflict suppression on opponent, reduce their combat power rate, and able to be more aggressive. Additionally, every time opponent does miss a hit, they lose power, about 35% of their current power. So that's one form of her power control. Second part of it is, every time you use solar energy, you gain power, which is the reason why your level 1s can be spammed repeatedly. Now, the most important thing, I suppose, is level 2 has this time pause mechanic where time slows down, and you need to tap on your block on time in order to convert your armor ups into solar energy charges. You can gain max of 16 armor ups and max of 15 solar charges. So we can see that we took our armor ups, we converted them to solar charges. Once they are above 5, they do not automatically replenish themselves. If solar charges are below 5, they automatically recharge themselves. Last point that's also quite important: whenever you inflict a 5-hit combo on opponent, you inflict energy vulnerability dormant effect on opponent, and then with level 1 you make them into actual debuffs. But you do need to hit 5-hit combos in order to stack them up dormantly, as we did throughout the fight here. You can see those gray icons. And that is quite important for her damage output, and that is also where SIG ability largely comes into play. But at the same time, it does force you to use your solar energy, even at times when you might not necessarily want to. And obviously, here's the problem, because we are throwing 4 special attacks now. I'm going for 5th one, even though I didn't kind of need to because I had no charges. And that takes away a quarter of your health if you are using recoil, which is why I'm saying that she's not a recoil-friendly champion, even though it helps her drastically to do fights that are slightly longer. And as I said, this first bit took us like a minute and basically a minute or so, which is, very, or less even than that. But now, in order to deal with the remaining health, we basically need to start all over, and our cycle will not even have as much damage potential, most likely, than it did before. We might make it to 15 charges the second time around, but we definitely can't do it again. And the next time, if we want to go for a full cycle, we can only make it to about 8 or 9 charges, and that means less special spam and, less benefit for your bang. And here we go. So we have lost 30% of Winter Soldier, but I did manage to get myself up to the 15 charges. And that means that at this point, we basically can finish the fight. Those 30% health should go away with this set of level 1s. And that is more or less how her rotation looks like. Right, let's swap to quicker. So this is a smaller health pool. Again, this is like a bare minimum Battlegrounds health pool, and she has a class advantage, and she has a passive heal block to deal with Deadpool's regeneration. And in a fight like this, she is a phenomenally good champion, because we can phase, we don't need to take hits in block. We can be super aggressive because we are reducing his combat power rate when we inflict suppression, or we are power draining whenever he misses. So here I'm just going to go for level 2. And all I need to get is close to 15 charges. Sweet, that's done. And now I just need to spam my level 1s, and the Deadpool's going to be dead. Sweet. Very solid core rotation with recoil. Here we did perfectly fine. And in this health pool, we would be doing fine without recoil as well. Then we can show that with recoil masteries, even on larger health pools, like class disadvantage, nearly 200k, we're going to be doing basically equally well. And that is if we do not, that is with recoil active. Still, the idea here is basically the same. Harry, inflict suppression debuffs this time, so we can be more aggressive. Consume our phases and then basically go for my level 2s. Now here I do not get a perfect set, so I end up with 12 charges. It is something that I still need to practice when throwing my level 2s, but it still should be a decent amount of damage. So here I drop my level 1s. Unfortunately, I'm just under 1 bar of power, but it's perfectly fine. We win a combo in between the level 1s. Didn't really change anything there. And now I'm going to throw my last special one. And we still finished the fight perfectly respectably in about 50 seconds. So that's not bad at all. The problems will start now when we are taking off the recoil, which is, again, what you ideally would want with Vision, because she's a special spamming character. This Deadpool fight, we can still do perfectly fine. There's no reason to worry. Rank 3 Vision against 160k health pool with class advantage, even without class advantage, probably would have enough reach. But she's definitely a champion where you really need to pay attention to opponent's health pool. And now I'm going to go for my level 2. Opponent's passively heal block, so obviously Deadpool's not regening. I get to my 15 charges. Sweet. He's at 60% health here. I believe I'm going to finish a combo with medium to inflict another passive heal block. And now we're just going to be spamming our level 1s, and we actually will have enough reach. We can see that one level 1 took a decent chunk, second level 1, finish it off, and we still had another one loaded up. So that's perfectly fine. Now, however, again, something a bit chunkier. And here's going to be that massive difference. Where with Vision, if your full cycle doesn't take the opponent down, the fight duration extends significantly. And we're going to go for, again, the base setup, as you guys have seen. I'm not even going to show it. We basically throw a level 2. And we start spamming our level 1s. And here with the first cycle, I have got an opponent down to 50-some% health. I think I'm going to throw another level 1. It's nice. That gets him down to 39%. But I'm again left at 6 armor ups and relatively few solar charges. And now I do need to start spending those solar charges in order to inflict the energy vulnerability dormant on that Venom the Duck. Here we can see that couple of block hits that hurt drastically if, the parry is a bit off. And here, again, we're going to throw the level 2. Sweet, I get back up to 13 charges, which should be more than enough in this case. And now I'm going to bait out that level 1, ideally, I believe. No, but I'm still going to start spamming my level 1s, because why not? And here we go, the fight is over. And now we can see that the fight duration went from previously, what was it, 50 seconds or 48 seconds? Now it's 1 minute and 44. Basically more than doubled, because we didn't have Liquid Courage Double Edge active. And that's the difference with Vision. If you can't take something down in one cycle, you're going to have much longer fight. And then let's take a look at some of her better matchups. Obviously, as a tech champion, she fares relatively well against vast majority of the mutant champions. Namely, let's say we can easily use her against Bishop. But keep in mind that Bishop does have a massive energy resistance. So the fight is not going to be the quickest, because you are inflicting Incinerate. However, because, again, and here's the upside, her damage is Incinerate or Plasma in this case, but it is not tied to debuffs, so basically perfectly fine here against mutants, even if it was Incinerate, because it's an instant Incinerate damage. It's, fine. Bishop will not go into his overcharge mode. And now I'm just going to go for level 1. Throw that. I'm going to go for another level 1. It is not as impressive damage. Here we're using a rank 3 4-star against a 6-star rank 4, but we do have, obviously, Recall Master is active. And yeah, we kind of ran out of juice here in the end, so we do need to finish the fight more or less the good old-fashioned way. You need to go for another level 2, which I do. I did inflict that heal block as well, just to be a bit cheeky and use the fact that I was running Liquid Courage Double Edge at the time. And the fight's over. Without Liquid Courage Double Edge, obviously this fight would be significantly longer. Similarly, obviously, she functions against Havoc, because she consistently power drains him, and on top of it, she has armor ups. And realistically, she will work well against majority of the mutant champions. Now, against Domino, she does not have immunity to ability accuracy reduction. However, her phasing mechanic has 125% ability accuracy, which does mean that you can at least rely on your phasing against Domino. You will, however, be taking crit fail damage whenever your abilities do fail. And yeah, the base idea again here is pretty much the same. We do know the rotation, but she works against Havoc, she works against Bishop. She's not going to be the fastest champion against them. Another thing is that she can deal with Mystic champions relatively well, and that is despite the fact that she has buffs active, they don't expire. So they do not fuel Mystic Dispersion. On top of it, she does have 2 different forms of power control, which, often is the bigger problem when fighting Mystic champions. And because of it, yeah, she can deal with Mystics relatively well. She doesn't inflict or rely on armor breaks, which is something that Mystic champions are, immune to in recent times. And we can clearly see that going up against somebody like Absorbing Man is definitely possible. Also, the fact that you have access to passive heal block lets you, take care of the region that somebody like Absorbing Man might have. So she can definitely deal with Mystic champions. Here we're going to have another Sasquatch fight where basically the same thing. We can utilize the heal block in order to take care of the fight. Go for your standard rotation. Just make sure your heal block's active. And ideally make sure that he's in Wrath of Tenerak when you start spamming your specials, because, you want to do full damage. And yeah, you can take care of somebody like Sasquatch as well with a mix of passive heal block, your burst of damage if you time it well, if you have long enough range, and that again is a big if. Moving on, you can actually do Korg with her relatively well also, and that is due to the fact that she has her phase mechanic, which means that you will have easier time finding openings. And Korg is obviously not immune to Incinerate, he's immune to the shock, so there's no problem there. And yeah, only thing you really do obviously want to take care of and watch out for is make sure that Korg's rock field is down when you use a level 2 especially, because that is making contact. But other than that, yeah, she's a decent Korg counter if you need in a pinch. So she clearly has some matchups where she can stretch her own abilities. Now here I failed a bit with my level 2. I only converted 11 charges. At the same time, Korg's rock stacks came back at the wrong time, which kind of annoyed me. But that's fine. We go here. Sweet. I'm gonna go for level 1 spam. And yeah. So this is, just a showcase of how useful that phase can be, without a doubt. And then the rest of the fight, stretches longer because she ran out of her reach, and then the fights do get significantly longer. Obviously, there are other matchups where she can work extremely well. I'm not showcasing all of them, just the fact that she can go up against somebody like Korg, she can deal with Mystic, she will deal with majority of the mutants. My personal problem still with Vision is the fact that she does feel undertuned. And if you enjoy the champion, I think, it is fully reasonable stance because she is a very interesting champion. I, in fact, enjoy the champion. I just do personally feel that her range is not quite big enough, and I do hope that she gets tune-up. Either way, I do hope that this video was helpful. If it was, let me know. If it wasn't, let me know why. If you have any other questions, also let me know why. And I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information